Hey everybody, good to have you here again today. And today I wanted to talk about an old favourite of mine. This is something that I've banged on about for a long time, and it's about having a writing routine. This is so important. Having a routine of some sort that works in your life and the way that your life is organised is vital. It's so vital, and I want to give you 3 reasons why you must set up a writing routine for yourself if you want to get to the end of your novel. If you want to finish your book and have any chance of revising it and then publishing it, you've got to get to the end. You've got to write that first draft. And to do that, you need to be putting words on the page really regularly. And so the first thing I want to say about setting up a writing routine is that it forms a habit. And habit is crucial to everything. Habit is what makes doing something that feels difficult less difficult. It's not about willpower. Willpower is a sort of tricky one, and you might hear people say to you, you just need to show willpower, and if you show that willpower, you'll get the job done. You can do anything if you have enough willpower. And I, for one, don't really find that very useful. It can be useful in the short term. So if you've got, let me think, so say I am feeling peckish, but I'm not really hungry. I'm just a bit bored, or I'm making a cup of tea and I want something to go with that cup of tea, and I might reach for a chocolate biscuit or a packet of crisps or something, a snack of some sort. But I don't need it because, I'm not hungry, basically. I'm not hungry, I just want it. That is a good instance when you can have willpower. The willpower to say, oh, don't be silly. Once I get out of the kitchen with my cup of tea, I'll stop thinking about that chocolate biscuit and I'll move on with my day. So if I can have that willpower for just a few minutes while I make my cup of tea and get out of the kitchen, then it works brilliantly, and that's really useful. But when it comes to longer term things, when it comes to a big project like writing a novel, or even writing a short story of 5,000 plus words, then willpower is not enough. It's very short. Willpower is short-lived, and you need something that is a lot more sustainable if you want to get to the end of a big project. And that's where habits come into play. And so, there's lots of different theories on how long it takes to form a habit. Some say 21 days, others say 30 days. The last thing I read about habit forming, it said it takes at least 90 days. So there's different theories on it, but it certainly does take a period of time for you to build a habit. And you'll only know when it's a habit when you come to the desk easily, when you come to your writing space easily. Then that wall of resistance that you've got is so much diminished that it feels much easier, much less frightening to turn up at your writing desk and write the words that you need to write. That's when you know it becomes habit. So depending on your personality, that might come in 21 days, but equally it might come in 90 days. And I have to admit, I think I'm probably somebody for whom it takes more likely 90 days before a habit is formed. But when you do form that habit, everything becomes much easier. And I think that's why I found it so much easier and more pleasurable to write books 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. As opposed to that first book. That first book, it was a lot harder, of course, because it was my first book and I was still learning a lot. But equally, writing on a regular basis, particularly at the beginning, that was not a habit I had. That was not part of my day-to-day life. I had to be very conscientious about it. And it's something I talk about a lot, is scheduling that time. And if you haven't got my 3 steps to finding time to write, or my 30 top tips for finding time to write. That might be a better one. You can find that at emmadesi.com/30 top tips. It wasn't until I made writing a regular part of my weekly life that it became much easier. Up until that point, I promise you, I dreaded every writing session. I was fearful of it because I thought, I don't know what I'm going to write. I don't know what I'm going to write about. What am I going to write about today? I don't know what happens next in my story. I write by the seat of my pants, so I'm never clear as to what is going to happen in the next scene or a chapter. So I had to kind of muddle along, and I would turn up to my desk and think, oh, I don't know what I'm going to write today. This is terrifying. And in the early days, would think of everything that I could do instead of writing my novel. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that is a very, very common thing. Suddenly the washing becomes very important. Suddenly folding those sheets becomes important, or doing the filing that you've put off for ages. A little bit of DIY that you've not wanted to do. Suddenly those things become a priority, and you want to do those first. Anything to avoid actually sitting down and doing the writing. So just like you maybe can resonate with that's something you've experienced as well, is that just the thought of sitting down somewhere and pulling out your pen and paper or opening up your document, it immediately lifts this wall of resistance. And you can maybe even feel it physically. Perhaps your heart starts beating a bit faster. You maybe feel yourself flush. You can feel your body flushing because it's scary. It feels scary and it feels intimidating, and it doesn't feel secure. It doesn't feel safe to go and sit at your desk because you don't know what you're going to be writing about. But the more you can kind of acknowledge, oh, okay, yes, I'm feeling this resistance. And then you can even now say, but so did Emma. Emma also felt this in the early days, so that means it's normal, and that's a good sign. The more you do it, though, the lower that wall becomes, until eventually it does become a habit. It does become a regular part of your week, and you no longer fear it at all. You might still be a little bit nervous because you're not 100% sure what you're going to be writing that day, and you might be feeling tired that day, and so you're not convinced that you're going to have the best words that day, but you no longer have that huge wall of resistance that pops up just at the thought of it. You're much more willing to go to your desk. In fact, more than willing, you're happy to go to your desk because experience has taught you that even when you start off feeling a bit nervous, by the time you get into this, by the time you start writing, the fear and the worry and all the external stuff that inhibits you, it falls away. And before you know it, you are engrossed in the story you're telling. You're there with your characters. You can see the things, the environment. You can see the setting. You can see what people look like. You can see the way that they move. And then the words come as well. The dialogue comes as well. So before you know it, you are invested in this story that you're telling, and you're forgetting about the fear. You're forgetting about the worry. But the difficult bit is getting yourself to your desk. So the more that you can schedule in your times, 100%, particularly in the beginning, you schedule in your writing times. You know your diary. You know what's happening in your week. So only you can determine when you can write. And sometimes you might get lucky and you might get an hour that is devoted just to your writing. But other times, the majority of times, it might be that you are just trying to catch 20 or 30 minutes in between something, whilst you're on the bus, whilst you're waiting for your child to finish a class, and while you're at the doctor's waiting for your appointment, whatever it might be. There are opportunities in your week, usually even within your day, that you can find to do a spot of writing. Not for an hour necessarily, but you can maybe find 20 minutes where you can just sit quietly, think about your characters, think about the book. And just in that quiet moment, in having those 5-10 minutes of peace and you're switching off, that's often when you can have a real aha moment for your story, and you get to quickly jot down a note or two about it before you forget. You might only have those 10 or 15 minutes, and that's not long enough for you to write down anything meaningful for the scene, but it will be enough for you to have that breathing room that you need, that every creative needs. You need to have that breathing space in order to let those ideas percolate to the top. So, I think I've got a little bit distracted, but you've got to schedule in the time. You've got to make it a regular part of your week, if possible, the same time every week. But I do appreciate that's not always possible, but you need to schedule that in so it becomes a habit. It becomes a natural part of your week. So most of the time, I no longer need to schedule in my writing time. Most of the time it's a given. I know that I'm going to go to my cafe and I'm going to do my work. The times that I do still schedule stuff in is when I've got a deadline looming and I really need to prioritize that work. So that I still do that. I still schedule in the writing time. I let my family know, particularly my husband, I need to go and do this work. And so we agree that, and off I go. But I still do it, however many years in, however many years later, I still schedule my time, and I 100% recommend that you do the same until it becomes a habit. And when you have a habit, it's much easier to maintain. It's much easier to keep turning up for yourself because you're not relying on willpower anymore. You're relying on habit, which is just so much easier, so much less painful than forcing yourself through willpower. So create that habit, schedule in your time. The second reason that it's so important to set up a writing routine for yourself is that you feel like you're making progress. I promise you. You're making progress, weekly progress. You see the words, you see the words build up on the page. You don't have to be a speedy writer. You take as long as you need to write your book. But even if you only write 200 words a week or 500 words a week, now that's something tangible that you can see. Now you can see your notebook getting fatter with all those pages being filled. Now you can see your Word or Google document getting longer and longer because each week you're adding a few more hundred words. And if you're really on a roll, you might even be writing several thousand words a week. And this helps you to feel good about what you're doing because you can see the progress that you're working. And I don't want you to underestimate the feel-good factor that comes with that. You see the hard work that you're doing pay off. It's not just some arbitrary idea that you've got in your head about sitting at your desk and working. You've now got the tangible evidence that the hard work that you've been putting in, this writing routine that you've been putting into place is paying off. You can see it literally in front of your eyes that this is happening, that the words are going down, that the story is growing, the story is developing. And that really, really does feel good. And because it feels good, because you leave each writing session feeling reinvigorated with your work in progress, it makes it so much easier to come back the next time and reinforce that new habit that you're building. So routines are vital for that as well. You get to see on a regular basis the work that you're putting in and the words that you're putting down and the progress that you are making. So it's such a valuable part of your writing life is having that routine in place. The third reason that it's so important to have a writing routine in place is that it makes you feel like you're working. Now that might kind of go against what you originally would have thought, which is, well, I don't want it to feel like work. I want this to feel like that this is for fun and it's just for joy and it's not work. Well, I've kind of got to burst that bubble for you a bit. The question that you've got to ask yourself here is, well, why are you writing? If you are writing purely for the fun of it, purely for the joy, the stories that you write are just for you, they're just for your family and friends, and it's just a really feel-good factor that you get from it. It just is, it's just something you enjoy. It keeps your brain ticking over, keeps your intellectual capacity, the cogs working. Then that is absolutely fine, and you don't need a routine. Then you can come to your writing as and when you please, as and when the muse hits you. But if you want to write because you want to sell your books, if you're writing because you have an ambition, a dream, a desire to either self-publish your books and find your readers, or query an agent and publish with a traditional deal, then that's when it becomes work. You have to rephrase that in your head and see it as work. It is work. And I can vouch for that at the moment, actually, because as I'm recording this, I've got a deadline, which is next weekend, and I'm not always feeling the love, I can assure you. But I've got to take myself to my cafe, and I've got to make myself write and revise. That is part of the job of being a writer. That is part of my work of being an author. And when I can frame it like this, when I'm going to the cafe, when I'm sitting down at my writing desk, and I understand that this is work, it changes my frame of mind. It changes how I approach my work. So, if you were thinking about your day job, and if you turned up at your day job waiting for the muse to hit you, waiting for inspiration to come, you'd probably be sacked by now, because who knows when the muse is going to hit? Who knows when inspiration is going to come? And a company, your employer, can't afford to wait for you to be in the mood. You've got to do the job when you turn up at work. And one of the advantages of going into a workplace is it gives you this automatic cue to your body and to your brain that you're changing gear. Okay, now I'm in the workplace. Now I get to do my work. I get to do my job. And when you have your regular writing times, when you have this routine for yourself, you signal to your brain, okay, this is my work time. This is when I do my job. It's one of the reasons I love working in a cafe. It triggers my brain to say, okay, you're out the house, you're out of your cupboard, you get to write now, you get to do your job now. It's you get to switch off for a time from doing the fun stuff like recording podcasts and going in social media and those fun things. This is the job. This is the work of being a published author who sells books, who has readers. And if you can find a way to incorporate that for you, whether it be going to a cafe, whether it be going to a library, wherever it is for you. I know writers who write in their car because that's the best place for them to write. That gives them the space that they need to do the work that they need to do. Wherever it is for you, your brain switches and says, okay, it's work time. And this helps you get into the right frame of mind to do your work. It helps you to switch off all of those other distractions. It's why I do try and encourage people, if you can, if it is available to you, not to write at your kitchen table, not to write where there's lots of family members around, not to write where your brain associates it with a social space, with conversation and having fun with other people, but rather I encourage you to find a space that signals for you, this is quiet time, this is work time, this is writing time, and it just lets your brain switch off from all the other things that are going on in your life and focus in on your work. Now, for a lot of people, I know that is their bed because their bed for them is a place of calm. It's comfortable, it's warm, it's a place of calm, it's a place of reading, it's a place of relaxation. And so that can be a really great place to work. But if you don't have that available to you, then go to a library and that be your space, or go to a cafe and let that be your space. But find somewhere that your brain can associate with quiet, with work, with writing and getting the job done. And it's a good habit to get into, to see your writing as work, because if you do achieve your dream of finishing your novel and self-publishing, or finding an agent who is going to sell your book to a publisher who is going to expect more than one book from you, getting into the habit of seeing this as a job, as work, will serve you so well in the future. Now, we're lucky that it's a job that we love. We're lucky that it's a job that we get to do at the time that suits us best. We're lucky that this is a job that we can do in our pajamas if we want to, but it is a job. It is work, and the sooner you can come into feeling that way and regarding it that way, I promise you that it's going to serve you so well in the future. Now, you might be kind of shouting at the podcast right now and thinking, yeah, but I work. I've got so many other things to do. My life is busy. How can I fit in this time? That's a question that only you can answer. I can give you suggestions about how to do that, which I do with my 30 top tips. But really, only you know your life. Only you know what is important in your life and what's not. Only you know where you can squeeze those minutes in for your writing. And ultimately, only you know how important your writing is to you and the priority you're willing to give it at this moment in time. So it might be, very genuinely and with no judgment at all, it might be that right now in your life, this is not the time for you to give priority to your writing. You know, it might be that you have a newborn at home, or it might be you've just changed jobs and the responsibility level has gone right up and you're needing to focus on that. It might be that you've recently started looking after a relative, and so that whole new routine is being put into place and you're still figuring that out. And you might be that you've got a new illness as well. It could be there's a health problem that's come about suddenly, or has taken a very sudden turn for the worse. Those are times when very, very feasibly, this is not the time for you to give your writing priority. But for others of you where this is not the situation, where you're in the run-of-the-mill, you're in a job you've been in for a while, you're in a routine with your caring responsibilities, your health is fine, you know, life is plodding along, there are opportunities for you to make changes in your routine and fit your writing in. And so perhaps now is a time when you can prioritize your writing. And if it is, then only you can know where you can fit that in and what changes you need to make to fit it in and to make it happen for yourself. Because one thing I've certainly learned, in not just in my writing but in all areas of my life, no one is going to hand something to me on a plate. No one is going to say, hey, here is 6 months free where you have no other responsibilities and you can just write this book. Oh, wouldn't that be lovely? But that's not going to happen. I've got to make that happen. The same if I wanted to have a traditional book deal. No one's going to come along and say, hey, I know you really want this, so here's a deal for you. We're going to pay you this vast advance and you go off and write your book. Oh, no, that's not going to happen. I've got to write the book. I've got to do the work, and I've got to go out and find that agent if that's what I want. So only you know this, and I want to really encourage you to have a think about what's important in your life at this moment in time. What is it that you genuinely want to give priority to? And it may be your writing, and it may not be your writing. But just remember, wherever you are right now, things change. Life is always ebbing and flowing, and so even if the time is not right for you at this moment, it will be in the future, and then you'll be able to reassess, change things up a little bit, and shift that routine and make your writing a habit. Wow, okay, we covered a lot in this episode, but I hope you can see how important a writing routine is. And sometimes it means, you can have that groan because you know it's the right thing to do, but it feels like a big job. It feels quite difficult. It feels like you're uprooting your life and having to give everything up. But I want you to know you don't have to give everything up, but you do need to prioritize the writing for a period of time until that first draft is written, and then you can rebalance again and give other things a priority. But it all comes down to you, but I promise you it's 100% possible, and I promise you it is 100% safe for you to prioritize your writing. All right, my lovelies, I will leave it there for just now, and I will see you next time.